depending on what Pokemon Scarlet and Violet decide to keep and improve upon what worked with Legends Arceus, then yeah, I can see those games being some of the best Pokemon games out there, or at the very least the best Pokemon games on the Switch.
Oh, how wrong I was.
Pokemon does not care about their community, they just care about your money, and it shows in the modern Pokemon titles like Scarlet and Violet.
Pokemon is a series that has completely lost its way, and I do not think it will ever course correct.
This game is writhing with horrible performance issues, muddy textures, poor optimization, and clunky animations.
Scarlet and Violet are a disgrace. These games are an embarrassment. Game Freak and the Pokemon Company should be ashamed for releasing something this terrible so quickly after Arceus.
Pokemon, we need to talk. You haven't been the same ever since you made your way over to the Switch. Every game you released on the console has been met with controversy after controversy after controversy, with the only exception being Legends Arceus. I know I compared you guys to Sonic in my first video, but I think I might have been too harsh in the blue blur. Hell, you guys even broke the break glass in case of emergency and are bringing back Mega Evolution. If that doesn't scream desperate, I don't know what does! Hell, the best Pokemon game on the Switch wasn't even made by you! And it involves the main character falling in love with a pair of literal swords. I wish I was joking about that one. Just like how the future of DC is riding on James Gunn's Superman, the future of Pokemon is riding on Legends ZA. And if that fails, well, we're looking at a bleak future for the franchise. But it doesn't have to be that way. I created a roadmap for you guys on the Switch 2 involving 6 games that, if done correctly, could bring you back to your former glory. So strap on in and let me tell you my plans for the future of this franchise. The first thing I want to fix with the Switch 2 is the concept of Pokemon generations. For me, they've kind of lost their meaning over the years. At first, they were called that because each generation was on a different system. But starting with the DS era, they started cramming 2 of them into a single system. However, games in the same generation were still able to connect with one another. But starting with Gen 8, there was no connectivity with other games. What's more is that around this time, they started introducing new Pokemon throughout the generation. So other than introducing a new region, and whatever gimmick they decide to ditch next game, what's the point in them? One of my main goals with the Switch 2 is to redefine what a Pokemon generation is. Gen 10 will be the only generation on this console. You will have to wait until the next console for Generation 11. Each game and DLC will teach the next installment, and leave breadcrumbs that will all come together in the final game of this generation. Now, I know you guys want to put this game out on the Switch 2 as soon as possible since you would rake in a huge amount of money, but I suggest you hold off on that. Right now, Pokemon is a damaged brand. While you guys started off on the right foot by putting Coliseum and XD on Switch Online, and while Legends ZA might be good, all that goodwill will be undone if the next game isn't good as well. Instead, take your time with it. Make sure the graphics are up to date, iron out all the bugs, delay it to 2027 if you have to, but for the love of Arceus, don't price this game at $80! You will be a laughingstock for weeks if you do this. As for the region, story, and characters, you can do whatever you want with them. However, there is one thing that you must do with these games, and that is to convey that you are sorry for how things have turned out these past couple of years. Convey that you are sorry for putting out so many lackluster and unpolished games. Convey that you guys are sorry for how you handled the Dex cut. And convey how sorry you are for letting us, the fans, down. And to prove it, this game won't be split across 2 versions. Instead, it'll be one singular game, which for the remainder of this video, I'll call Pokemon Restoration. While the dual release strategy started as a way to incentivize people to interact with each other via versus exclusives, recently it feels more greedy. They even released a double pack at full price with the only additions being a few berries or drinks depending on what you buy. Cause yeah, those will totally be helpful. Plus with features such as raid battles and competitive battling taking over the social aspect, there isn't any need for version exclusives. But if you really want to make money off the hardcore fans, why not release a collector's edition? Include an art book, a statue of the legendary Pokemon, as well as a keychain. Now, you may be asking yourself, what would the gimmick for this generation be? Well, there isn't one. For the most part, Pokemon gimmicks haven't been received well. While Mega Evolution is the most beloved, it also has its fair share of criticism. For starters, you needed one on your team in order to compete competitively, and not all of them were good, with some of them being on par or even worse than their base forms. Looking at you, Mega Garchomp. On top of that, most of the Pokemon that did get Megas were fan favorites, with Charizard and Mewtwo getting 2! While I think Z-moves were good for the story they were taking in Sun and Moon, they have their own issues. They're too powerful and too random to predict, with moves like Z-Celebrate offering an Omni boost. It also didn't help that the animations took too long in an already slow game. Dynamax is easily the most hated gimmick. It combined the worst aspects of Z-moves and Mega Evolution, with games boiling down to who utilized it the best. It was so overpowered that Smoke got banned it from Ubers. Just to give you an idea of how ridiculous that is, the only Pokemon that got banned from that tier at that point was Mega Rayquaza, a Pokemon with 0 counters. While Terrestrialization is the most positively received gimmick since Mega Evolution, it also has problems. It can be a hassle to get a Pokemon with a specific Terra type. It also shares the same problems with the last 2 gimmicks, with it being too powerful and too random to predict, with accident moves being taken against it in OU. So yeah, Restoration won't have any gimmicks. The next thing I want to do with these games is to bring back post-game content. While it isn't anything new in the genre, what set Pokemon apart from the rest is that it made it feel like your journey wasn't over. Saving the world and becoming champion felt like a step in your journey since there was always more to do. But recently, they've been neglecting that aspect to the point where Scarlet and Violet barely has any. And no, I do not count DLC as post-game content. It doesn't have to be on the same level of Heart Gold and Soul Silver or Black and White 2. Just give us a few areas to explore, a decent subplot, and some legendaries for us to catch. Since there's still going to be DLC, I also think it would be cool to add some connectivity between Restoration and the GameCube games. If you beat those games, it'll unlock a side quest involving some of the characters from them, allowing you to catch Celebi and Jirachi. As for the DLC, instead of there being 2 waves, there'll be 4. Doing this would help me fix Pokemon's biggest mistake. The Watcher's effect still lingered to this day. Dexit. For those of you who need a refresher, back in the day, you could have all the Pokemon up to the current generation in a single game. But starting with Sword and Shield, they decided only a select Pokemon would be transferable per title. And oh boy, people were pissed. It also didn't help that they handled it as was Xbox when they shut down Tango Gameworks. But thanks to DLC, we can fix that issue. Since each wave will be distributed throughout the console's lifespan with free updates here and there, we can slowly add the backend, make them look good, and make sure they don't break the meta. Speaking of the meta, it's time to talk about the next game on our roadmap, Pokemon Champions. It's essentially a spiritual successor to Pokemon Battle Revolution, primarily focusing on battling, which I have to say is a genius idea. While the mainline games can be more experimental with their battle system, Champions can keep the traditional system we all know and love. And from the looks of it, we'll have all the Pokemon and gimmicks here. For better and for worse. While I do like this idea, I have a few suggestions. For starters, I suggest this game take notes from Pokemon Showdown. For those of you who don't know what Showdown is, it's an online Pokemon battle simulator that lots of people use. It's a quick and easy way for people to make teams without going through all the hoops and hurdles you'd have to go through in the mainline games. Building a team should be almost as easy as in Showdown. I say almost because I do think there should be at least some work involved to make them battle ready. Have there be some type of currency to buy items, change abilities, and be able to raise and lower your Pokemon's EVs and IVs. Bring back the different battle styles you ditched over the years, such as triple and inverse battles. Also include a single player campaign. It doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking, just something that'll keep us occupied when we don't feel like battling another person. However, the biggest hurdle facing this game is trying to balance a meta with all 4 gimmicks, but luckily, I have a few ideas. For Z-moves, they would need to be nerfed, make them less powerful, and have them only raise 1 stat. Dynamax would also be nerfed, with max moves dealing less damage and no longer having a secondary effect, as well as having your Pokemon hold an item to Dynamax. The same thing would apply to Terrestrialization, since not being required to hold an item is what makes them so powerful. Plus, in the case of Terrestrialization, it would cut down the need to grind. But how would someone go about building a team with 4 gimmicks? Well, you wouldn't be able to. In the Pokemon anime, the World Championship tournaments allows participants to use only one gimmick per match. So why not bring that rule into the games? We could also offer a lore reason as to why. We could say that using more than one of these gimmicks per battle would affect the trainer's body. Now, doing this would obviously create the monster known as Terra Electric Amplitude Shedinja, but there's a simple solution to that. Shedinja wouldn't be able to terrestrialize. And this isn't the first time Game Freak did something like this before. The move Dark Void was heavily nerfed in Sun and Moon, with its accuracy reduced to 50% and Darkrai being the only Pokemon that can use it. If another Pokemon tried to use it, it would fail. Now that we're done talking about champions, it's time to move on to the next game. But before we do that, let me give you some insight as to why Nintendo has been doing better than Sony and Microsoft this past generation. It's no secret that games today are massive, with it taking a lot of time and money to complete. And with technology advancing, both are only going to increase. So instead of having an entire studio work on a game for 7 years, it bombing and the studio shutting down, Nintendo has been releasing smaller scaled games to pad out the time between these big releases. Think of games like Mario Wonder and Echoes of Wisdom, which is what our next game is going to be. A smaller scaled game that fans have been asking for quite a while. Pokemon Let's Go Johto. Out of all the games on the Switch, the Let's Go games have aged surprisingly well. There were multitudes of reasons why they were hated when they were announced. At this point, the fanbase was getting sick of Kanto, so you can imagine everyone's frustration when the first mainline release on a home console was not only another Kanto remake, but one catering towards Pokemon Go players. It also didn't help that you could only get the original 151 alongside Meltan and Melmetal, but like I said, people have warmed up to these games, and have been requesting sequels to them for quite a while. So I say, why not give them what they want? While Heart Gold and Soul Silver fixed a lot of issues with the original, they didn't fix everything. Plus, they had some issues of their own. Most of the Kanto and Johto Pokemon that got new evolutions this generation aren't available until late into the post-game, with some of them not being available at all. Not to mention, you still couldn't get Pokemon like Haldor until you reach Kanto. Like seriously, what were you guys thinking? This is your chance to fix those issues, as well as make this a definitive Johto game. You could also use this opportunity to bring in concepts that were introduced after Gen 4. Bring in Mega Evolutions. Create Cantonian and Johtonian variants of later Pokemon. Have there be side quests involving the Sevi Islands. Create one where you track down the Galarian birds and paradox versions of the legendary beasts. You could even resolve the plotline from the original Sun and Moon of Lily bringing her mom to Kanto. There is so much you can do with these games! Our next game will be one that harkens back to a much simpler time. A simple 2D game based on the neighboring region of Restoration. It will be teased in Restoration's base game, with one of the Pokemon from that game featured in the DLC, but the main selling point is that this game won't be developed by Game Freak. Instead, it'll be developed by another studio. One thing I noticed about the franchise is that while the world building is fantastic, the story can be kinda lackluster. While they have gotten better in recent years, I'd still want to see what a studio that's known for telling great stories can do with the franchise. Obviously, Game Freak will oversee the project. As I said, they do some fantastic world building. Plus, they can make sure the other studio doesn't go off the rails when making it. As for our next game, it'll be the return of a beloved series, a new Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. The story of this one will involve you investigating a mysterious phenomenon that makes Pokemon lose their sense of self and go on a rampage. You notice that Pokemon that eventually rampage close themselves off from their friends and become more hostile, as well as having a sinister black aura that grows over time which strangely only you can see, with it eventually engulfing them, leading them to rampage. Eventually, you realize that a black mist is causing this, and if you stay in it for too long, it'll turn you into a shadow Pokemon. And the one spreading it is none other than Shadow Ho-Oh, with it later being revealed that Hoopa Unbound is the one pulling the strings in an attempt to destroy the world. Now, my original plans involved XD and Coliseum remakes, but since those games are going to be on Switch Online, it won't make sense to remake them. However, I still wanted a game that emphasizes Shadow Pokemon, cause as you might have guessed, it ties into the final game of this generation. Plus, it gives us a chance to get a proper Shadow Ho-Oh since Pokemon Go fumbled that opportunity. Like seriously guys, how do you miss the mark this badly? And finally, we're on to the final game for this console, the Legends game. Throughout the generation, you'll hear tidbits about a Pokemon in a faraway region. The people in Restoration's DLC talk about a fearsome Pokemon that managed to stop a war a long time ago, but almost destroyed the region in the process. And Let's Go Johto Team Rainbow Rocket appears in the Civi Islands because they believe that place has information about that Pokemon. In Championship Story, the Evo team will talk about how they've been hired by someone to collect strong Pokemon. They weren't told much, but what they were told is that they'd be used to capture something very powerful. In the Mystery Dungeon game, you'll hear Hoopa talk about a Pokemon called the original Shadow Pokemon, and how its ability to turn others into Shadow Pokemon eclipses that of Shadow Ho-Oh. The people in the 2D game will tell you rumors about how Pokemon in a faraway region act more aggressively, and that it's similar to Pokemon they heard about in the Ore region, with you exploring that region in the Legends game. There, you are a new recruit to the International Police, and meet your mentor Looker. Upon arriving, you are quickly thrown into a mission to stop Team Rainbow Rocket. Not only do you learn they're using Shadow Pokemon, but their goal is to capture the original Shadow Pokemon and rule the world. Along the way, you meet up with familiar faces such as Silver, Annabelle, and Professor Crane, as well as Giovanni, who wants to thwart his counterpart's plans, as he believes he is tarnishing the name of Team Rocket. You also learn the backstory of the original Shadow Pokemon. During the Pokemon War, the original Shadow Pokemon fought alongside a human. However, that human was killed and the Pokemon was captured and tortured, closing his heart and releasing a great power that affected other Pokemon, turning them into Shadow Pokemon. While it was able to stop the war, it left the region ravaged, with its terror looking to expand to neighboring regions as well. However, a mythical Pokemon gathered a group of people and Pokemon, and bestowed upon them some type of power, one that the texts call the ultimate bond between people and Pokemon. Thanks to that power, they were able to seal the original Shadow Pokemon, and put an end to the Shadow threat, with that power being the Bond Phenomenon! That last part is a bit of wish fulfillment, as I really want Ask Ninja back in the games. My man was done dirty in the anime in Scarlet and Violet, and from what I'm hearing about Legend ZA, it's gonna happen again. But Game Freak, follow this roadmap, and I can guarantee you that the Switch 2 will be the best system you guys had to date. Or not, and continue whatever you guys have planned if ZA fails. I'm sure fans would love Ilka giving Black and White the BDSP treatment. But anyways guys, that's all from me. Thanks for watching and I'll see y'all next time.